Hey there, K-Korner crew! It's your pal Crown back again to share some more unbelievable stories from everyday life. Today, we're diving into tales that range from supermarket chaos to vacation mishaps and even a little therapy room drama. These stories are sure to surprise, maybe even make you laugh, and definitely make you think. So wherever you are, get comfy and let's embark on this storytelling journey together. And hey, if you're loving these stories, show some love with a like and a subscribe for more adventures. Ready to roll? Let's jump right in. So I used to work as a cashier in a supermarket. This story took place on my first day of work there. And my second day working at a cash register on my own without a supervisor sitting next to me, teaching me the ropes. Yes, I had 2 days of training. Supermarkets in my country are a zoo on a regular day. However, Thursdays and Fridays are absolute mayhem at the store and are a special kind of hell. Fridays the store closes 2 hours before sundown, as do most stores in this country. During winter this means around 2 p.m. and in summer closer to 4:30 p.m. People get crazy on Fridays trying to get all their shopping done and get home in time to cook dinner. If you can avoid coming to the store on Friday, please do so at all costs. I always tell people after this day, the reason Thursdays are hell is because we get all the customers who don't want to come on Friday. Now, this was early evening on a Thursday at a time when the store is absolutely jam-packed. We had 10 checkout lines open and every line had at least 6 to 7 people in line. Basically, if you are stuck with a slow cashier, there is nowhere else to go, unless you have 10 items or less. Everything is going well until I get a customer with 2 shopping carts full of items, mostly non-perishable items. And these are the large carts you find around big stores in the US, like Walmart. I found out later he buys this for a community center in his neighborhood and he fills up their pantry twice a year. Such a nice guy. He greeted me very politely and then said the most dreaded words I could have heard that night. This will be a delivery. Just a quick break from the story to explain why this was so dreaded, especially on a day like today. When we get a delivery, the cashier will call helper from the store to help bag the groceries. Usually people do their own bagging. The bags would then be placed in plastic containers, and containers would then be placed on top of each other and taken to the back fridge until delivery. A regular delivery is usually between 3 to 5 crates. Each crate has a number, which then I have to input all of them into the computer, along with the correct delivery address and phone number, and print out with a receipt and place copies in the crates. Even for a small delivery, this always takes extra time. Back to the story. This guy has 2 full carts and wants a delivery. I say sure, no problem. Then I turn to everyone else in line and let them know that this is a delivery and it will take just a bit longer than usual and apologize for any delay this may cause. We always do this so customers will be aware of the delay and can move to another cashier if they are in a hurry. This is when the whole line groaned simultaneously. I don't blame them. There were nowhere else to go. I could see every one of them craning their necks to check out other lines and they all decided to stay. So I start scanning as fast as I can. I'm pretty good with numbers, so even though it's my first day, I remember many of the codes and things are moving rather quickly. I get to a point where the bagger can't keep up with all the items and the area to the left of me, where I place all the scanned items. It's just a mountain of cans and bags of chips and whatnot. I can't even scan another item because they are falling back onto my scale. At this point, I stop and ask if he wants help bagging. The customer and the bagger are both appreciative and I help bag groceries for a few minutes, just enough to clear some space so I can continue scanning items. This happens every few minutes, it gets full, I stop to help, clear some space, and keep going. And this is where the Karen comes into play. She's maybe early 40s, long brown hair, and looks nothing like a Karen, except for the way she was standing, with one hand on a hip that extended so far to the side I wasn't sure how she's still standing. She's in my line, about 5 to 6 people in front of her still. This is the conversation that follows. "Hello, what are you doing?" Me, not answering because I didn't think she was talking to me, I kept scanning. "Excuse me, what kind of cashier are you? Why aren't you doing your job? Stop being lazy and do your job." She screams at the top of her lungs. "I'm sorry, ma'am, I'm just trying to." "That's not your job. You're a cashier. Do your job. Do your job. I realize now after reading so many Reddit stories that this would have been a perfect chance for some malicious compliance. I'm sure some of you hope that I did just what Karen wanted. Too bad I didn't know about it then, or that it was only my fourth day on a job. That's not what happened, although I dream sometimes that I did just that. Sit back and sip my coffee until the space is cleared for more scanned items, you know? Be a cashier. Well, next time. I say, I'm just helping to move things along faster. If this is a problem or you are in a hurry, feel free to move to another line. I'm sure another cashier will be more than happy to serve you. I may sound like I'm the jerk with this line, but I said it really nicely, not sarcastic at all. Obviously, that didn't help. Karen not listening anyway and having none of it. Just do your damn job. You're a cashier, what is wrong with you? Are you stupid? You should be fired. I stop listening at this point and don't answer as I'm still helping to bag and scan as fast as possible, knowing it's not going to help anyway. However, I see one of my manager, let's call him Joe, walk up to Karen. Joe is great, by the way, always helping the workers. What seems to be the problem? He asks. Karen still yelling, your cashier is awful. She's lazy and she's not doing her job. You should fire her. Tell her to do her job. She's not doing her job. She repeated that a few times like a broken record. Joe looks over at me for a second, understands exactly what is happening, turns to Karen and says, can't you see she's trying to help? She's trying to make this go much faster. Now Karen starts screaming words, I'm assuming, but I couldn't really make them out. She was practically foaming at the mouth. Joe tries to calm her down by explaining or trying to that how me bagging items is actually helping, and this makes Karen even more irate if you can believe it. Spit flying from her mouth, arms flailing, screaming like a banshee, and suddenly I notice an older woman, nice old lady, must have been around 80 years old, trying to get Karen's attention by tapping her on the shoulder. It takes a few tries, but she finally gets her attention and spins her around by her shoulder. Hey Karen, excuse me. Karen, what? Your daughter is crying. This is when the entire store seemed to have stopped talking all at once, like someone pressed mute and turned off the volume. The sea of people in front of me parts a bit, and we all look down and see a little girl, who couldn't have been older than 4, clutching her mother's size, bawling her eyes out, snot gown out of everywhere, hyperventilating. This girl was terrified and I can't blame her. Seeing her mother going off like that must have been terrifying. And she has no idea what's happening. She's in a huge store where she knows no one and she's practically invisible. This silence lasted an entire 2 seconds because that's when Karen started yelling at Joe. Look what you did. You and your stupid lazy cashier made my daughter cry. And a bunch of other crazy sounds that were perhaps supposed to be words. Things happened in slow motion for the next few seconds. She starts to swing towards Joe. Joe is not a big guy, but he's bigger than Karen, that's for sure, and he's not easily intimidated because that's not his first Karen. She would have decked him right in the face if the nice old lady hadn't grabbed her in a bear hug to stop her. Yes, she did. I had to pick up my jaw off the floor. At that point, other customers got involved trying to peel off that nice old lady from Karen and stop Karen from trying to kill Joe. And from Joe trying to kill Karen, cause he was fuming by then. At this point, I saw mall security storm the castle. Our store was inside a mall, and the sea of people just surrounded Karen and I couldn't really see much of anything anymore. Kind of like football players when there is a fumble and they all jump on a ball. By the sound of yelling getting farther and farther away, I figured Karen was being led either to the back office or to the mall security office. Mall jail. This entire time this is happening, I'm still bagging and scanning items. And now about halfway through this customer's purchase, I finished up with him with no more problems. He was very nice and thanked me profusely for helping with the bags, even though technically it wasn't part of my job. He said I was the fastest and nicest cashier he ever had the pleasure of meeting. I was just happy to help. No one else on my line complained. I actually got compliments from people about keeping my composure. Apparently many cashiers in my country think it's okay to yell at customers and just be plain nasty. I worked in customer service for many years prior, and I have never yelled at a customer, even if they deserved it. Once the rush died down a bit, I went for a break. I met another employee in the back room and I started to tell him of what just happened when he cut me off. She was yelling at you? I heard that. Well, everyone heard that. but I had no idea what the hell was happening. He told me that the police were called and Karen was escorted out of the store and a mall in handcuffs, and I filled him in on everything, and we spent the next 30 minutes laughing. I don't know what happened to the child. I'm assuming they called another family member to pick her up. I also don't know what happened with Karen after that, since I ended up working there for another year and I never saw her again. Hopefully she learned to do her grocery shopping on Tuesday/Wednesday, or was possibly in prison or house arrest. This was the first Karen I had the displeasure of meeting while working at that store, but definitely not the last. As a celebration to being fully vaccinated, myself and my family decided we were going to go away for a week to go whale watching. Such a trip needs supplies, so my family heads to Market of Wolves to get groceries and such. So to start, what we were wearing. My mother was wearing a blue dress with short sleeves, trimmed with white flowers design and beige khakis. Oh yeah, she also has a service dog too. Vest and all, a brace dog for those who are curious. My father was wearing a gray button-up shirt and black pants. Finally, I was wearing blue jeans and a green shirt that read, "I'd make Zelda pun, but I don't want to try and force it." Service dog, who I will shorten to Doggo, was wearing his service vest. When we entered the Market of Wolves, my mother and father went one way and I went the other way. I was to get things like sunscreen and stuff while my parents got the food. We were bringing our own food since the food there is super expensive. As such, this part is second-hand from my parents, but I will embellish with the classic Karen tropes. They were in the frozen food aisle picking out some burgers and sausages for our grills. They at first heard the classical "excuse me" when choosing between Moza burgers and barbecue sauce burgers. They had just ignored it, but my mother felt Doggo tugging at the leash, trying to get her attention. Not something he was trained to do, just really smart. Mom turned around and saw our Karen of the story. She was clearly confused by the blue dress and began asking my mom where something was in the aisles. Obviously, my mother said she didn't work there, and this sick Karen off. My father heard the conflict and approached them, but the gray button-up shirt made Karen think he was a manager. I wish I could explain more, but as I said, this was second-hand. At this point, Karen must have stepped on Doggo's tail, because as I was heading back to find my parents, I heard poor Doggo yell loudly, which is out of character for him, and I took off running. I arrived at the scene with my mother trying to comfort Doggo. He's still slightly red from blood and my mother tending to it, my father arguing with Karen, and an employee wearing a blue shirt, black pants and an apron coming up. The employee is trying to figure out what was going on, and Karen is going on about how disrespectful my mother and the manager are being. The employee is trying to explain the whole concept of us being customers, but Karen wasn't listening. I took the employee aside and asked him to get the real manager, and approached Karen. I should note I run role-playing games, and through that, have learned how to improvise. "What's going on here?" I ask. Karen looks at me. "Who are you?" "I'm the manager." "What are you doing here?" My father gave me a confused look. I went to say something, but I stopped him. Karen looked me over my cheesy t-shirt and all and scoffed. "You're not the manager, you're just some kid." I'm 29, by the way. "Okay, then what about my parents is telling you that they work here?" Karen stopped and looked at my parents, and you can see gears turning in her head. My father saw I had things under control and he went to help my mother, who doesn't work well under stress. I say, "Okay, now that you're listening, what's happened to Doggo?" Karen stuttered. "I don't know." That better be true. Doggo is a trained service dog, and is worth probably more than what you make in a year. I need to… No, you're staying right here till the manager gets here. Doggo is hurt, and I want to know why. Karen must have been intimidated into staying, which is a surprise to me, which will be explained later. Eventually, the manager arrives 10 minutes later, because the situation wasn't urgent enough, along with a pair of police officers who must have been called by someone. Karen tried to defend herself weakly, but all the breeze she had in her sails against my parents were gone. The manager came back and confirmed Karen stomped on Doggo's tail when Doggo got between my mom and Karen. He sat down in front of the two to stand his ground, but he wrapped his tail to his side to keep it out of the way, meaning it looked like on camera Karen also kicked the dog. I saw it, but let my parents take care of things. They pressed charges on Karen and the manager paid for our groceries personally, telling us he apologizes and that he should have banned her earlier. When we got back to the van, I started crying. You see, something I neglected to say was, I'm not a confrontational person. Seeing Doggo hurt, my mother crying and my dad about to dick Karen, I snapped. I was actually scared of what I would do. If Karen didn't stand down, I was a bit afraid of what I might have done. Luckily, it didn't come to that. Mom is staying home with Doggo today while myself and my dad do some running around. She's still shaken up, and we would rather not add more stress to her. Thanks for reading and sorry it's a bit messy. I just wanted to get this down. I needed to get this off my chest and felt writing about it would help. Court is hopefully going to be after the whale watching trip, but I haven't heard anything about it. Update. We cancelled everything tonight and Doggo is on the emergency vet. Doggo is physically going to be okay. The vet said the scrape, as he described it, is shallow and should heal. Unfortunately, he will be committed to the cone of bravery when not on duty until it heals to make sure he doesn't make it worse. Mentally, well, I have no updates on that, but he seemed to be normal around family. I have work tomorrow, so I will ask Mom how everything goes when she takes him out for work. As for charges on Karen, interference of several animal, willful injury of a service animal, animal abuse, assault, destruction of property, disrupting the peace and more. She is facing upwards to 5 years in prison minimum. I recently recalled an incident that happened a few years ago. I'm a marriage and family therapist. At the time, I was primarily working with court-ordered clients who have been convicted of domestic violence or substance-related charges, often DUI crashes or larger possession/intoxication charges. This is a particularly challenging population, and many people in my industry refuse to work with them. However, it can also be incredibly rewarding. For those who don't know, it's pretty standard for the judge to mandate therapy if you're convicted of domestic violence. I always approached my job as trying to serve my client as best as I can. It helps their family to be more secure, it helps them avoid consequences, and it helps change a long-standing pattern of abuse so it doesn't get learned by the next generation. I take this responsibility very seriously, and the vast majority of my clients ended up turning things around. The challenge with this population is that they don't actually want therapy when they first arrive, but their choice is to do it here or go to jail for violating their probation agreement and do it there. Most just start by showing up and going through the motions. Part of what I do is to help them get invested in their own treatment. Not always easy. If someone is disruptive, combative, or absent, I have to include that information in a monthly update to the judge. Like most clinics, if you don't show up, then you're often charged a no-show fee unless there is a good reason. I tried to give people the benefit of the doubt. Most were in a pretty bad situation in their lives, and I didn't want to set them up to fail. Unfortunately, there are always some who try to take advantage of that, and I had to ultimately hold them accountable. I had a client who was particularly disruptive. He was not only disengaged or combative in session, but he would frequently disappear for weeks at a time and only return once a judge's clerk sent him an order to show cause, essentially saying get in here and explain why you aren't doing what you're told. Somehow, he's also managed to get his insurance to pay for his treatment. Typically, insurance companies won't pay for court-ordered therapy. One day, he arrived 25 minutes late to a 55-minute appointment. I told him we would have to end on time as I had another appointment in the next hour, but he would still be charged his full copay, about $30. He began shouting in the lobby that he would only pay for the time remaining in the session, that we were scamming him, that he would report us to the judge, go for it, see how that works out, and finally that he refused to pay at all but wanted credit for showing up despite the fact that he didn't arrive until 25 minutes after his appointment. I explained to him that according to the intake paperwork he signed, he understood the rules and this was not the first time we had this discussion. He could either pay for the session and I would count it as a late showing but present, or he could refuse it and it would be a no-show. Then mark it a no-show, and he stormed out of the lobby. So I marked it a no-show, which means the billing office automatically charges him $50. And that's a wrap, folks. I hope these stories brought a smile to your face or at least made your day a little more interesting. If you got a story of your own that can top these, drop it in the comments. I'm all ears. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't yet. Keep spreading positivity and remember, life's an adventure. Catch you in the next video. Crown out.